If it's Thursday, the shutdown talks are down to 2 letters. One is F, and I'll let you guess the other one. Good evening, I'm Chuck Todd in New York today. Welcome to MTP Daily. The shutdown impasse has turned into a blame game of stunts, spite, and revenge after the president took the extraordinary step of outing and shutting down Speaker Pelosi's trip to Afghanistan to visit the troops, seemingly in response to Pelosi's move calling on him to cancel the State of the Union address until after the shutdown ended. We're going to get into that crazy mess that this story has kicked up in Washington, but we're going to begin tonight with a story that's even crazier and messier for the president. His lawyer is no longer denying campaign collusion. Just let that sink in a minute. Look, I could show you all the times Rudy Giuliani and the president have denied campaign collusion, and I will. I could show you all the strange red herring arguments Giuliani made when he dropped this bombshell, and I will. I could show you all the ways they're seemingly trying to clean up this mess today or change the subject, and I will. But folks, the president's lawyer is no longer denying the allegation that's at the center of Bob Mueller's investigation, that some members of the Trump campaign may have colluded with a hostile foreign power to help Donald Trump get elected president. And to start, there's perhaps no bigger question at this moment than this. Why is the president's lawyer no longer denying that central question? So we're going to dive right in. Mimi Rocha is an MSNBC legal analyst and a former assistant U.S. attorney. And she joins tonight's panel of former Florida Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo, our newest MSNBC contributor. Welcome, sir. Princeton University professor and an MSNBC contributor, Eddie Glaude. And NBC senior politics editor, Beth Fooey. So let me start, gang, with the initial Giuliani comments from CNN last night. So take a listen.
The amount of false reporting about this case is despicable.
Mr. Mayor, false reporting is saying that nobody in the campaign had any contacts with Russia. False reporting is saying that there has been no suggestion of any kind of collusion between the campaign and any Russians. Because now you have Paul Manafort giving poll data that winds up leading to this coincidence.
Well, you just misstated my position. I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
All right. So let's pull up number 3 in case you're wondering here, because we could do a quick fact check of all things having to do with the no collusion here. So you heard him say he never said it. Take a listen.
Sure, this was supposed to be about Trump campaign Russia collusion.
Gone.
It's gone. Okay.
Is it still the position of you and your client that there was no collusion with the Russians whatsoever on behalf of the Trump campaign?
Correct.
There has been no collusion between the Trump campaign and Russians.
Between me and my campaign and the Russians.
Between the Trump campaign and the Russian people. There's no collusion with Russia.
To say it one time again, and I say it all the time, there was no collusion. I didn't know the president. There was nobody to collude with. There was no collusion with the campaign.
All right, Mimi, and just for giggles, we went back to Rudy Giuliani today just to double check. And here's what he said to Kristen Welker. He will not deny campaign collusion. He said this: if you say to me tomorrow someone in the campaign colluded with the Russians, well, okay, that person did. But we didn't know about it, and I don't know of any such person. What do you make of all this?
You know, I up until now, tried to ignore most of what Giuliani says because it changes minute to minute and it's not reliable. But this is big. This is a big concession. By saying what he has said, he has, as you said, implicitly acknowledged that someone in the campaign, he's still saying...
Or ones, right?
Or,
we don't know.
Right, people. He's still saying not Trump. Let's put that aside for a second. The people in the campaign colluded. He now is saying, well, you know, that has nothing to do with the investigation. That, as you point out, that was at the heart of the investigation. It has not only been about did Trump collude or conspire. It has been about did a presidential campaign wittingly or unwittingly conspire or collude with the Russians. And we've been seeing facts come out that suggest that's true. Giuliani is now acknowledging it's true. So let's talk about Trump for a second and what that could mean.
Right.
I think that Giuliani and Trump both have or are making this incredibly wrong and narrow definition of conspiracy. They do not seem to understand what conspiracy or aiding and abetting mean criminally. Because if you accept the fact now, as we should, that people in the campaign colluded with Russia, Trump would have to show, I mean, he would have to have been living with his head in the sand to not have been at least aware of it, and probably even had direct knowledge of it. And did he really do nothing to advance that in some way? I mean, we don't have those facts yet. Well, there are some that you can argue, like, you know, calling out to the Russians for hacking the emails, things like that. But the point is that he really is now in a box in the sense that is going to be very hard for him to get out of.
Beth Fooey, you know, there was something else that Rudy Giuliani told our colleague Kristen Welker today, and it was stunning. He acknowledged that Friday bombshell, that the FBI had opened a counterintelligence investigation, that they were unaware that that was the investigation when they answered Mueller's questions. Let me put this up here. Kristen Welker's question to Mr. Giuliani: would you and the president have answered questions differently if you had known about the counterintelligence investigation? Giuliani's answer: if I had known about the counterintelligence probe, I probably wouldn't have answered any of the questions from Mueller, because I would have said the investigation is completely illegitimate and I don't know why we're cooperating with it. Beth Fooey, let it sink in. The president didn't know about this and his lawyers didn't know about this. I'm starting to wonder if the president, it's pretty clear to me the president may not be fully truthful to his own lawyers.
Well, but I think we can also stipulate that the president has very ineffective lawyers, starting with Rudy Giuliani.
But is that on the lawyers, or is it on him if he's not being fully truthful?
Of course it's on him. And everything emanates from President Trump, and he's been extremely unreliable in what he said about this. You played all those sound bites of him denying collusion, and yet he would send his lawyer out on television to say, well, in fact, collusion did happen. There's some huge breakdown of communication there. Or the president in some way has directed him to go out and acknowledge what perhaps Mueller's report is going to say very bluntly very soon, that this is what happened. And despite the fact that Rudy Giuliani is such a gaslighter, and he will tell you, I didn't say that when I did say that, and of course it's very easy to check, as you did, the fact is that he's gone ahead and made this claim, and he's going to impugn the president in effect. And today, none of those Trump campaign folks stepped out in an outraged way to say that Rudy Giuliani had been wrong. That's the thing that really strikes me, Chuck.
That's an amazing thing. And by the way, Kristen followed up with one more question. Put up full screen number 4, guys, in the control room. Do you acknowledge you shifted your tone with Cuomo last night on collusion? Rudy Giuliani's response: no, if it was subconscious.
Where was Jared Kushner today? Where was Brad Parscale? Where was Roger Stone? None of those people stepped out to push back on anything Giuliani said.
Carlos, a month ago you were an elected official. And I say this because, as an elected member of Congress, the president's attorney is now admitting that maybe some people on the campaign colluded. What would your colleagues do with this information?
Perhaps, Chuck, the new audience for Rudy Giuliani is Congress. Remember, this is as much a legal and investigative process as it is a political process. And what Giuliani did yesterday was lower or perhaps raise expectations, it depends on your perspective, on what members of Congress can expect from the Mueller report. It's clear that they're abandoning...
You don't believe this was an accident, do you?
I don't. I think this is part of a political strategy as the administration, the White House, prepare for Mueller to file this report and to manage what's going to happen in Congress in the weeks after the filing of that report. The new standard is the president did not collude. Everyone else is on their own.
It does seem like this wasn't an accident.
Well, it doesn't seem like an accident, but there are two things that I want to say really quickly. One is that we need to begin to think of Giuliani like Kellyanne Conway and Sarah Sanders, right? Even though Trump may be lying to him, he's still consciously going out lying to the American public, and he's been doing that over and over again. Even as the lies have been revealed, he's still lying on behalf of him. So I'm beginning to take whatever Giuliani says, particularly at 9 o'clock at night, with a grain of salt, right? Then the second point is, it seems the strategy, and it's deliberate, is that now they're throwing bodies overboard.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's true. Let everybody else go.
To move the goalpost like he did last. And one body in particular that's really in danger is Don Jr. Because that meeting in Trump Tower and what they did on Air Force One, folks are in danger.
All right, you brought up it's a great segue. You should be a producer, Eddie. I want to play, because I go back to, as much as I know you want to give Rudy Giuliani grief here, it is pretty clear to me the lawyers are not getting full information. Jay Sekulow already got caught once, and notice you don't see him on television. Let me play what he told me and then what he had to correct down the road on that Trump Tower meeting. Take a listen.
The president was not involved in the drafting of the statement and did not issue the statement. It came from Donald Trump Jr. So that's what I can tell you, because that's what we know. I had bad information at that time. I made a mistake in my statement. I've talked about that before. That happens when you have cases like this.
Mimi, that happens when you have cases like this. That seemed like a very polite way of saying when you don't have a client who's always truthful.
Yeah, and look, defense, as a prosecutor, I saw this over and over in much less consequential, smaller cases where, you know, a lawyer is only as good as the information his client gives him. And it's, I don't want to give Giuliani too much credit here, but it does seem like the story has shifted. And one way, meaning the facts that Giuliani has been told, and clearly the facts that Sekulow was told, one way you know that is that if this had been all along the story of, yeah, maybe people in the campaign colluded, but not the president, they wouldn't have attacked the investigation the way that they did from the beginning. It wouldn't have been, this is a witch hunt, this has to stop, you know, all of the things that we've been hearing on Twitter and on TV for forever. It would have been, wow, we think, yeah, people in the campaign colluded. You know, go find that out. Let's get the facts and hold those people accountable, because I had nothing to do with it. So the response, it was telling in and of itself, and now it's changed.
So when you look at this sort of what now appears to be a concerted effort to delegitimize the FBI more than anybody else during this sort of 12-month period, if you will, when Mueller got appointed in May of 17 all through now, what does that tell you as a prosecutor? Does that tell you that they know that they're afraid of the FBI, they know the FBI's onto something, and they're trying to just, I mean, what do you take away from it as a prosecutor?
I've always taken away from it the idea that if the facts aren't on your side, you attack the investigation and the investigators. They knew, somebody knew, Trump certainly knew, that damaging facts at some point would come out. They would deny them until they couldn't anymore. Then the facts would come out and they would say, you know, this is the corrupt deep state that is out to get Trump, so you can't trust the facts. They have tried to make it so that when the facts come out, the American public doesn't trust them. And they've been somewhat effective in that, but I think so. That the tide has started to turn the more that real facts. Remember, Mueller filed something with 400 exhibits. We don't know what those exhibits are, but that's evidence, 400. And that isn't about Trump, but my point is there's facts and evidence, and those are hard to spin.
You know, one of the things, Beth Fooey, the president has been, the last time Rudy Giuliani put out a new fact, right, when he went on to Sean Hannity and sort of blurted out that everything had gotten repaid of Stormy Daniels and all of that. The president himself went out there and said, oh, Rudy's got to get his facts straight. He's a great guy, but he just started he didn't like that coming out. The president hasn't said a word about this, and he's had, you know, near about 20 hours to do that. He's not corrected this either.
No, and that's my point from before as well. You haven't heard anything from the president, anything from his son, anything from Jared, anything from Brad Parscale, anything from Roger Stone. It's been very, very quiet, and President Trump could perhaps argue that he's so focused on trying to open up the government and build his wall that he's thinking about the people's business. That's not typically how President Trump operates. When those two stories came out last weekend, essentially saying that President Trump might be an asset of Russia and that the FBI had opened this counterintelligence investigation, he was all over that one. And he was tweeting and angrily pushing back all weekend. This time he's not, which says to me that he and they all know that there is evidence to support what Rudy Giuliani said, and that that's going to be coming out very shortly.